勝負だカカロット。恋すぎだ。
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is AS and welcome to my YouTube channel. I would argue that one of the very first platformers that I played on the PC is the original Rayman. A fictional creature with a range-based punch, Rayman flew like a helicopter, climbed tree branches, freed his friends from their cages, and punched his way to the end of each level with the hope of reaching and defeating the final boss of every area in the game. Since the title's release in 1995, various forms of the game and sequels have been released, with the most recent two, Rayman Origins and Rayman Legends, being some of the best platformers I have ever played. The chase sequences in Origins and the music levels in Legends are sights to behold. As we await the hopeful announcement of the next Rayman game, Ubisoft revealed during the most recent State of Play by PlayStation that a collection of different versions for the original Rayman is set to come out in celebration of the franchise's 30th anniversary, which it did back in mid-February of this year. It includes the MS-DOS, PlayStation, Atari Jaguar, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance versions of the first Rayman game, along with their ups and downs. At this point, we need to ask two questions. One, are the versions in the collection faithful renditions of the originals? And two, is the collection of these relatively old games worth the asking price? We will discover the answers to both of these questions in this review. Without further ado, let's review Rayman 30th Anniversary, which was released this year and was played on the PlayStation 5. Story. In a similar fashion to other platformers such as Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, the story in either version of the original Rayman takes a back seat and offers a simplistic excuse for Rayman to punch his way through the campaign. In short, Rayman's narrative follows the quote-unquote rescue the princess trope, although he is focused on rescuing his friends who are trapped in cages across the levels on display, rather than actually saving a princess. There's an evildoer who kickstarts the events of the tale, but he is as generic as they come. I'm not disappointed by the lack of characterization for a popular reason. Some games are not meant to be played for the story. Rayman is one of them, and the lore that is provided here is just enough to justify the cartoonishly violent acts that Rayman will commit in this game. Visuals and audio design. As the collection of games that were steadily released from 1995, Rayman 30th Anniversary implements some visual niceties to attempt to ease newcomers into the game's visual design from the mid-90s. The inclusion of widescreen support and the different filters per game bring out the nostalgic look of each title. The animations are also smooth, with the best looking and smoothest experience surprisingly being on the Atari Jaguar. It was a shocking discovery, since the MS-DOS version of the game looks visibly the worst between the MS-DOS, Atari Jaguar, and the PlayStation 1 versions. I'm not familiar with the technical differences between all three platforms, but I assumed before playing the game that the MS-DOS version of the game would look the best out of the three devices. When it comes to the collection's audio design, it is here where many players will feel discontent towards it. Let's start with the positive aspects. The sound effects are faithfully brought from each version's original counterpart. There are also some voice acting performances within a few of the versions, and they are as cringe-inducing as you would expect from a game in the mid-90s. As far as the music is concerned, the collection's shortcomings become apparent. Due to copyright infringement or an unbeknownst reason to me, the music has been completely altered from the original counterparts of the games into a soundtrack that is admittedly more generic by comparison. I have seen some YouTubers who criticize the entire product simply because the music was altered. Personally, the music is an acceptable downgrade. I miss the original music of Rayman, but the tunes in the collection are not aggravating by any stretch of the imagination. They're just average, nothing to write home about. Gameplay. Arguably the best and yet most infuriating part of Rayman, regardless of your chosen version, is the gameplay. Let's break it down. You initially start the game in the first area while only being able to walk and jump. As you progress into the story, you gain more abilities such as punching, gliding in the air with your hair, grabbing onto ledges, and sprinting. The implementation of these abilities give the Rayman games a hint of Metroidvania gameplay, as you will not be able to get access to some portions of the level without those abilities. If you would like to 100% either version of Rayman, you'll have to return to previously beaten levels and conduct a thorough search of the remaining Electron cages. Thankfully, Rayman incorporates multiple levels that offer unique designs and challenges. Additionally, the bosses ask you to use your newly acquired abilities to test your might. They are pushovers for the most part, but you cannot mash the punching button and expect a victory. I previously mentioned that Rayman's gameplay can be considered as infuriating. There is no question that the original Rayman, whether you are playing it on the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, MS-DOS, Atari Jaguar, or the PlayStation 1, is notoriously difficult due to hit detection while landing on certain platforms. It can be brutal in specific situations. There are few levels that offer variety in the gameplay, such as flying, ascending a series of platforms, or levels that are completely dark, but you'll have to contend with the difficult platforming sections for the majority of your time with either version of Rayman. In fact, those breaks from the platforming sections are purely gimmicky, especially since both the flying and dark levels only happen once during your entire playthrough. Fortunately, the Rayman 30th Anniversary Edition offers a rewind feature. It is an absolute blessing, as many gamers from the modern era could discover that the original Rayman is too difficult. The rewind feature allows you to go back in time for a considerable amount of time and attempt to correct your mistake. Furthermore, there are toggled on cheat codes that could make your life substantially easier, such as unlocking all the levels, gaining infinite health, and acquiring all the powers from the offset. These cheat codes come with a large caveat, which we will discuss in the next section of this review. In the absence of those time savers, every version of Rayman in this collection, excluding the Game Boy Color version, were sadly designed with a couple of extremely annoying mechanics. I'm not sure if the following aspects existed in the original versions, since I was never able to beat them. However, the mechanics we are going to discuss shortly could ultimately be the make it or break it features for many of you, especially if you intend on avoiding the cheat codes and the rewind capability of the Rayman 30th Anniversary Edition. On one hand, the camera is slightly zoomed in on the heroic combatant. It is not a game-breaking feature, but it creates scenarios where the acquisition of certain collectibles is not pleasant, because you cannot clearly see the ins and outs of each level. On the other hand, your entrance to the final area of the game is prohibited until you break every cage in the game. The warning by itself is not too bad, until you realize that a lot of the cages are incredibly well hidden. As a matter of fact, some cages will not appear until you hit a specific area of the level. I cannot imagine how disheartening it must have been for old school players of Rayman, who conquered a grueling level after grueling level, only to find out that they have to backtrack and collect everything before confronting the final boss, who, by the way, does not live up to the hype at all. As a way to cap off this section of the review, let me briefly summarize my experience with each version of Rayman in this collection, of which, like I said, there are 5. First, the Game Boy Color version is the least frustrating adventure, since you are not required to find every cage prior to beating the final boss. The other versions are identical in terms of the gameplay, but there are a few differences between them. The Game Boy Advance's frame rate is the smoothest, the display quality of the PlayStation 1 version is the cleanest, and the Atari Jaguar version is a great combination of solid frame rate and resolution. While the MS-DOS version lacks the visual prowess of its siblings in the collection, it includes over 100 additional levels of various degrees of quality that will certainly test you and provide additional content. All in all, either version of Rayman is an example of challenging platforms in terms of gameplay, but I would personally recommend the Atari Jaguar version in this collection as the ultimate Rayman 1 experience. Achievement and trophy support. Since my return to video reviews this year, I have typically been positive when it comes to the breakdown of the game's trophies and achievements. Unfortunately, I must break the streak with the Rayman 30th Anniversary Edition. Although the challenges seem straightforward and encourage you to play most of the versions by either defeating specific bosses or beating the versions themselves, the tedious nature of the Rayman 30th Anniversary Collection becomes crystal clear when the metaphoric smoke clears and you understand that you must 100% clear 3 of the 5 Rayman games to earn all of the trophies or achievements. By the time I was close to the end of my 3rd game's completion, I was utterly bored and wanted my experience with the Rayman 30th Anniversary Collection to end. The absence of any challenges in association with the best Rayman game in the collection, aka the Atari Jaguar version, forced me to scratch my head and conclude that the folks behind the creation of the trophy and achievement list wanted to add further frustration to the already frustrating and difficult gameplay of Rayman. Keep in mind that the usage of any cheat codes will disable your ability to earn any trophies or achievements, so your only saving grace is the rewind feature. If the rewind feature did not exist, I would expect the title's difficulty in terms of completion to jump from a 3 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10. If you want to complete the collection, you will be able to do it. However, be prepared for many instances of burnout, unless you are a die-hard fan of the Rayman franchise. Replayability and fun factor. If you're looking for an all-inclusive version of Rayman and do not mind the altered soundtrack, the Rayman 30th Anniversary Edition will cover all of your needs. The amount of content is staggering, with 5 different versions and over 100 additional levels in the MS-DOS version. The quality of the content alone certainly justifies the collection's price tag. You can also create different personal challenges with the cheat codes, leading to additional replayability. The fun factor, on the other hand, is pitch perfect. The core gameplay can be a lot of fun, especially while understanding the time frame in which these versions were released. However, the amount of fun that you will experience with the Rayman 30th Anniversary Collection will depend on your skill with platforming games, and whether or not you are content with abusing the rewind feature of the games. If the answer to either question is not favorable, you'll be in the midst of playing classic games that can be enjoyable, but are more so maddening. In the end, Rayman 30th Anniversary is difficult to critique as a good or bad game. If you enjoyed the original Rayman, regardless of the version, this collection is a no-brainer as a purchase. If you have never played the original Rayman and would like to use the 30th Anniversary as an opportunity to experience it for the first time, there are several factors that you have to consider. If you're looking for a good nostalgic platformer, I would recommend that you check out Croc, Bug, or Crash Bandicoot. If you're looking for a challenging platformer that aged well, I would personally suggest that you play Celeste or Super Meat Boy. However, if you're looking for a reason to go back in time and check out the origins of Rayman, Rayman 30th Anniversary is not a bad pickup. Its soundtrack may have been altered, but the amount of content on deck and the ability to rewind to correct past mistakes offer a much more accessible way to see how the Rayman franchise began. I will give Rayman the 30th Anniversary Collection from 2026 on the PlayStation 5 a 7.5 out of 10. Well folks, that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for checking it out. What are your thoughts on the Rayman 30th Anniversary Edition? Are you disappointed by the absence of the original soundtrack? Or are you simply happy that Rayman is getting another spotlight? Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Till next time, have a great day or evening wherever you are. My name is AS, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.